Welcome, everybody, to the Too High Podcast. I'm Seth Galino alongside Diante Elite. As always, Diante, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and whatever you celebrate. Hope you're doing well. Hope San Diego is still warm enough. I'm not sure how you can consider whatever weather you have, 80 degrees sunny, as Christmas weather, but whatever floats your boat.
I would have you know that it's overcast today, so eat that. But yeah, dude, happy holidays, Merry Christmas to you guys, all the listeners, to you, Seth, all of our people at PFF. It's been such a fast year that I really haven't had an opportunity to really think about, my progression to get here, the changes with this podcast and all that. But, for people who don't know, I owe my co-host a great deal of thanks for me being in this position. So thank you, dude, for real.
It's entirely out of laziness. You understand that, right? It's entirely me being like, I don't want to do this alone, dude. Like, I can't do this alone. I need help. And you're the best co-host in the world. It's just seamless. We last year around this time, maybe the end, early December, I guess it was, 2020. I had you on the old podcast. You didn't work for PFF at the time, and just to talk about Ohio State, because at the time you were writing about Ohio State's defense and offense, I guess, just in general, and they were going into the playoffs, or maybe they were going to the Big Ten championship game at the time, and the way we talked was so seamless. And then I don't know, a couple of weeks later, you got hired part-time by PFF to do some writing. So I was like, dude, the second that happened, I was like, thank God you're on every week. And you didn't have to do it, but you came on pretty much every week with me to talk to whatever guests we had on, to talk to me about whatever we wanted to talk about. And obviously things have turned out very well since we changed the name of the podcast. That's really the main thing. The discussions were always good, but changing the name of the podcast has done wonders. And we're thankful for all the people that listen and enjoy hearing us talk about football.
100%. 100%.
All right, so let's talk about football then. First thing we want to talk about, we teased it a bit on the earlier episode this week, but we wanted to get into probably the most fun thing of last week, which was the Saints defense shutting down Tom Brady. First time in whatever it was, 250 something games where he's shut out for the first time. And keeps one Drew Brees record intact, which is the shutout streak was at like 300 games for Brees, and Brady won't get there now because he's taken every other Drew Brees record. But you wrote the article. Go to pff.com, and if I'm not mistaken, like I said on Monday, pff.com. Let me pull this up. pff.com. You have as you guys know, everything you want from PFF. If you get a subscription, you can get the article content, which is from me and Diante. Mostly we have locked article content, so you get all of our stuff. You get the grades, you get the betting probabilities, the PFF Green Line, which is incredible, with all the player props you can get and all that stuff. So right now, 50% off if you use the promo code ELITEUP. That's ELITEUP. ELITEUP. 50% off. All the stuff that you get, like I said, me and Diante is writing, and so much more. The grades, the player prop tool, and all the stuff like that. So your article is up there on Dennis Allen and the Saints defense. Tell me what you found in these. They played them 5 times now. They pretty much dominated them at least 4 times. So yeah, what did you find?
Basically, it's confirmation of what we've talked about the last few times that these teams have played. And I know that when you were on YouTube with Vass, last night, talking about the game, like, we're all kind of coming away with the same thing. And it's quarters, right? It's playing these 2 high defenses, but it's a particular kind of quarters, right? Like, I think that as we continue to move forward in this kind of metamorphosis that the NFL is going in, these are the conversations that we have to have, right? Is what kind of families these coverages actually exist in, and what that means in terms of how you're defending these offenses. So they play what I detailed as man match quarters, right? Which is still in the cover 4 quarters family, but You're doing some different things in terms of technique, in terms of your progression, in terms of your rules and coverage to get brackets in the seam. That's the big thing. Your regular cover 4 deal, like the regular cover 4 that I think a lot of people are probably more familiar with, it is built in order to cover the seams better than like your true zone cover 3, right? But the danger with that is that you're still creating one-on-ones in the seam, right? You're still putting safeties on receivers in the seam, and you don't always want that. You may want 2 bodies, and even if the guys aren't vertical, if they start exchanging on routes or you're running routes at different levels, you're going to want to play tight coverage on that. And there are certain ways that you can attack your regular zone cover 4. So that to me was the biggest takeaway, is that they're able to play super tight to routes. But if you want to do that, the thing I really wanted to kind of hammer home early in the piece is you got to have guys that can live in one-on-one coverage, right? Like, so you just kind of see that interplay between having very talented players like a Marshawn Lattimore that you can go leave in one-on-one coverage outside, and now you can really constrict the space on the inside. It's having a guy like Malcolm Jenkins, so that way if they're trying to ISO up, a Rob Gronkowski, he can go line up on Rob as the X receiver and deal with him as a good, like, man-to-man cover 1 corner, basically. That was also really impressive. And you just see you see all these concepts, and we talk about it all the time, right? These concepts that are super sound from an offense. Like, okay, you got these different levels. You see the quarterback working through the progression, and you get to the end of the play, and I'm like, I don't think anybody was open. And you rewind it, and you look at it again, you're like, oh, wow, nobody was open. Next play, same thing. Next play, same thing. And then you get to see how that layers into the rest of the game, right? Now you're seeing all of these stunts up front, and now Tom Brady is sitting patting the ball, waiting for something to break open, and now you're getting this late pressure from an Onyemata, from a Cam Jordan. Those types of things are what has allowed Dennis Allen to be able to rush 4, play this really tight coverage, snap after snap, and be able to affect Tom Brady when the ball is thrown and while he's standing in the pocket.
I think, one of the things you talk about the way they're able to bracket the slot, and it's super important because their best player plays in the slot. Yeah. And I don't think, and this, we'll have a discussion on what we think the Bucs offense will look like without Chris Godwin. But when Chris Godwin's on the field, he's probably the key to that offense. And I don't think that necessarily means that he is better or worse than Mike Evans. I don't think we need to have that conversation. I just think it unlocks, especially with a player like Brady, I think it unlocks more what they want to do on offense when he's in the slot. So you don't have a choice but to bracket him. And if you don't bracket him, you're cooked for the most part. Like, he's too good, right? So I think when you talk about the distinction between kind of like the spot drop cover 4 that we think about that was played in the NFL for such a long time, and now some of these third down quarter stuff, like this bracket defenses, the Saints played what a lot of people call stubby, or lock, or stuff, or bracket. Honestly, at the end of the day, it's bracket. To the trips receivers, to Godwin when he was in the slot. So when you talk about that older, I shouldn't call it older. When you talk about that classic quarters spot drop, to me, that puts a lot of pressure on the nickel. If he's going to be inside leverage on one of the slots, then he's going to be the one that the offenses are going to attack, because he has a lot of room that he has to deal with to the sideline, from inside the slot receiver all the way out to the sideline. So he's the guy that you're going to put in conflict. You can flip that by playing bracket. Bracket is not perfect. No defense is, right? So that means you put a lot of stress on now the inside player, which in this case with the Mike and Demario Davis. Well, if you have players who can play football, you can get away, not get away with this stuff, but you know what I mean? Like, you can put Demario Davis there, and he can collect Chris Godwin on the in-breaking route and match him and make plays. And I think something that I talked about, and me and Vass talked about this when we broke down the game. You go to Coach Vass's YouTube page and listen to me and him break down the basically the whole game, at least the first half of the Bucs Saints game. Was everything you do, starting from kind of top to bottom, has an effect on the next player. So when we talk about, okay, the Saints were able to kind of bracket Godwin in the slot and this type of stuff. What was happening is they're playing with two safeties, like you said. One of the safeties is Malcolm Jenkins, often, who was on top of the Godwin. Okay,
Right.
on the opposite side, when there was just a single receiver, whether it was Gronk or Mike Evans, you had Marcus Williams playing to the half on that side. And again, this is how defenses is all connected. The Saints felt comfortable if it was Marshawn Lattimore on Evans outside wide to the single receiver side, or Paulson and Debo matched up, of all people, against Rob Gronkowski. They felt comfortable in that matchup, which meant Marcus Williams can now say, okay, if Brady doesn't look that way to the single receiver side right away, I can start working all the way back. And even though we're in a quarters defense, I could almost play like a single high post defender, get to the middle of the field deep. That's the first thing. That connects to the safety playing on top of the trips. So Malcolm Jenkins is playing on top of the trips as a quarter safety and says, hey, you know what? If Brady looks my way, I know I have Marcus Williams behind me. So I don't need to like set hut and drop back 20 yards in half the field. I could stay there. I'm at 12 yards. I'm good. And I can play any route that comes at me and breaks at a 90-degree angle. I'm good. I can just sit on it and I can drive on it.
Right.
Which is connected to Demario Davis, who says, okay, wait a minute. The guy behind me, the safety, is saying he's flat-footed. He's not getting any depth. That means, why do I have to get depth? Because if I get depth, we're just gonna stand next to each other. So he can come off of routes and stay at 5 yards and look for that crossing route, that little shallow that's coming back, that fin route that's coming back from Godwin or whoever. And I don't have to get depth. I can just sit there and make the plays. And so like that whole, it's all connected that way. And it starts with, and something you talked about in the article, it starts with, hey, to a certain degree, we feel like we have a guy or a couple guys that can match up with some of your best players on the outside, and then we can work inside and bracket Chris Godwin. All right, that's the podcast. We're good. We did it. So yeah, I mean, I think that was the main thing. Was there anything else you saw besides the stubby bracket coverage that you?
No, I mean everything else outside of that. I mean, it's pretty clear. I mean, they play their bracket quarters, and if they're not in bracket quarters, they're in cover one. And the reason why, again, and this is again where you start talking about how you layer things on top of one another, it becomes very, very feasible, very tenable to do that because it's going to look the same basically up until the point of the snap, right? Like we talk all the time about the pre-snap processing that quarterbacks have to do, right? And looking at guys as leverage. How deep is this guy? Where is the safety? Where is the slot at? Is this safety standing over the top of the sandbacker? Is that a pressure key for me, et cetera, et cetera? Well, if you're playing bracket quarters and your nickel is already outside of the slot receiver, that's the exact same leverage he plays in cover 3 and cover 1. So his footwork is going to look the same as it does in cover 1. So because of that, you're not going to get the same kind of tells all the time in terms of, where is the guy at? Who's doing what? Same with like a Malcolm Jenkins, right? If he's going to be rolling down over tight ends, or if he's usually on the same side that they're trying to get a bracket on, and then he rolls down late, you're not going to get that key until he moves, right? His alignment alone isn't going to give that away. And then the rest of it is just like different presentations of it, getting into those bear looks, those ups looks where you got all the linebackers and a safety walked up near the line of scrimmage, right? And being able to show these different looks and get these twists and stunts done while you're still playing these two high coverages. There are a lot of really good clips of them playing two-man out of these types of looks, being able to get guys from the line of scrimmage out and underneath wide receivers. And it's just been so disruptive for them. The one thing that Brady as a man throwing against man coverage likes to take those vertical shots. He likes to become a downfield quarterback. But to your point, if you can play great defense in between the hashes or in between the numbers, and you're forcing even a great quarterback like Tom Brady to have to beat you with those high variance balls outside on the posts, the deep comebacks, the go routes, that's probably the best you can hope for as a defense. And they're just able to squeeze all that space away, and that's why they've been as successful as they have.
And this is a defense that Dennis Allen plays. Like he plays stubby. It is what it is. And it just worked out really well in their favor. Another thing they did that I thought was really interesting was how they treated Leonard Fournette, because something that that both of us have kind of noticed the past month Honestly, Leonard Fournette leads the NFL or as of like 2 weeks ago or something. I'll look it up. But Leonard Fournette, I believe, at some point led the NFL in catches from out of the backfield or from all running backs, something like that. Now, generally, he's not great at when he either A, catching the ball, or B, B, with the ball in his hands. However, I think the past month has shown that if teams want to play off and not treat the back as a real player, as a real threat, then Fournette has been pretty good. Like he's made some plays with the ball in his hands. So the Saints said that and said, "Hey, we're going to do some things to kind of force the ball." So I don't know. They kind of like did some stuff where they kind of exchanged who had Fournette, especially when they were in man coverage, to that side of the field, or they were in man coverage throughout the whole field, to kind of get a body on him as quickly as possible. And Brady is going to check the ball down pretty quickly when he feels something is not right. But if you have a body on him, a body that you didn't expect to be on him, that can go a long way, because what they were able to do was, he caught the football a few times. They made a tackle almost every time, but before he got ahead of steam. So I thought that was a pretty big point of emphasis for them in this game plan. All right, let's get on to the other thing that a lot of people are talking about, which is the Philadelphia Eagles offense and their win against Washington and their continued wins this season. I believe they're 7-7 now. Jalen Hurts, is he like? Just give me what you think about Hurts this year and going forward, and what the offense should look like, and what it doesn't look like, and all that stuff.
I mean, it's functional. Well, it's better than functional, right? It's good. What they're doing on offense is good. It's working. So let me not downplay it or minimize what they've been able to do offensively. I wrote about it maybe 3 or so weeks ago, maybe a month ago, when they had that kind of 3-1 stretch over a month's worth of football. And the biggest thing then was like, okay, they're doing the spread to run stuff, right? Like, and that was a nice wrinkle for them to be able to get back into running the ball, which is something that they absolutely needed to do, because I think Sirianni's initial approach of all the quick game and progression-based passes and all of that, Hurts was really struggling with. And that part I don't think is fixed. I think it's improving, but it's not fixed. Still late. I still don't like the ball placement. He's still really not comfortable throwing the ball over the middle of the field. A lot of his vertical throws are really like scramble adjustments or like deep outbreaking routes, basically like your cover 3 beaters types of deals. So that is still an issue, and still, a reason to be, a little bit cautious in your optimism. But in terms of having a guy that you can build an identity around, they have a functional identity now with being able to use their quarterback as a threat in the run game, and they've been able to build RPOs off of it. They're able to build these bootlegs and play action passes off of it. And that's where a lot of the improvement has come from in their offense. And at the end of the day, I think that one thing that's easy to forget when an offense is maybe not running up the scoreboard, they have one of the better offensive lines, one of the best run blocking offensive lines in the NFL. And Philadelphia has had that for years on end now, really dating back to the middle of the Peterson era. They've always had these big bodies, these really good athletes. You see a guy like Jason Kelce running 20, 25 yards down the field, matching a running back stride for stride. It kind of speaks to what they have up front. And because you have that quarterback that can reequate the numbers in the box, you can find a lot of success in the run game. And that's what I think a lot of this has been based off of. For you as an offensive dude, is there anything that I'm maybe not seeing that's been contributing to their succs?
No, I mean, I think like the offensive line is probably number one, because even when it's not like, we always talk about I don't think we ever talked about this before actually, but just the general talk is like, hey, you don't have a great offensive line, but you have a player like Hurts who can run around. Well, you can run option stuff because you're putting less stress on the offensive line. You're giving them better angles because you're leaving some certain players unblocked for the quarterback. And that's great. And they do that stuff and are really good at it. But They can also go under center or on outside zone and fucking fire off the ball. And they put Washington's defensive line on skates the whole game, especially on outside zone. So like that to me is the main thing. And the pass pro has been unbelievable.
Yes, that's been a huge thing. He's had some of the best pockets in the NFL this year.
So could they go and get into the playoffs? Yes. Even win a playoff game? Yes. Getting a little further, having to do it on the road, that'll be more difficult. I don't see.
Yeah, I can't see that this year.
But if the defense has just a good run of form, the offense keeps doing what it's doing, and the offensive line keeps doing what it's doing. You never know. But for me, the question is then it becomes like, well, what do you do next season? And to me, it's pretty obvious because you have all these first round picks. Now, we thought at one point they were going to have 3 first round picks all in the top 10. That's not going to happen. I assume it'll be between, at this point, I don't know, 12 and 25, no, 12 and 22, maybe something like that. Still good, and you can maybe package some stuff and do some stuff. But I think if you went out and found an X receiver and maybe kind of replenished a bit on the offensive line in some positions where you're either getting old or you might not be able to resign some people, and then whoever else, maybe a defensive player you certainly need defensive players as well. Then you can probably run it back with Hurts. Now the biggest problem for me is like this stuff tends to I don't know how sustainable an offense like this is. Now Hurts is to a certain degree is one of the driving forces behind what they can do. But I do think it's more the offensive line that is taking them places, and then the scheme to a certain degree. But the scheme is definitely baked into what Hurts can do. So I just wonder if you can just be like, hey, we're just going to do this again. We'll get a better X. We'll get a bit younger on the offensive line, and just everything will be the same. And it's like, man, every time we say that stuff, it's never the same.
It's never the same. And I was just about to say, I'm about to make the classic mistake that everybody makes in these scenarios, which is say, oh, we'll just go load up the roster. And even if he's not the dude, you got to load it up roster. You'll go find a quarterback. Everything will be great. Like you try to replicate what the Colts have, right? Where you build out a nice, young, athletic roster, versatile roster, and then you hope that you get functional or good quarterback play, and you live in that world. And not to say that it's not a possibility, but I mean, that's just it's a tough needle to thread. It's a really tough needle to thread. The one thing I will say that probably is in their favor the most is the fact that they have some key pieces figured out, right? Like having an offensive line that's good right now, even as it's aging, is going to be helpful for them because they're eventually going to have to start phasing some guys out, right? But having pieces that are there to kind of help you transition from one unit to the next will be a big deal. They have a lockdown corner that I think has been playing better as they have a better understanding of how to use him. They do need to shore up what they're going to do with the defensive line. Yeah. All their best players have gotten old at that position. Their younger players have not been the best contributors outside of Sweat. So I do think that there are some things that they have to shore up there. But you do have some things to be excited about. And obviously Devontae Smith looks like exactly who everybody said he was going to be. So that helps as well. I think that for them, you probably should take it that Colts, that Ravens type of approach where it's like, hey, we're going to get all the height, weight, speed guys in the world, and we'll try to be as athletic as possible, refine it as much as possible, and then when you find the quarterback, everything's rolling. So that has to be the hope because, like you said, there's a pretty clear ceiling on what this will be. I think that the floor is nice. It's nice to know that even in a year when people were expecting them to kind of bottom out, that you have enough with Hurts in this offense to be a competitive-ish team, be a wild card threat. But yeah, I think that we are still very clearly in the early building phases if you're a Philadelphia Eagles fan.
Okay, did I have this wrong? What position does Devonta Smith play? Is he the X?
I've seen him work a lot outside.
Yeah, and I know he did that at Alabama. I just assumed that he was more of a slot guy. But no, honestly, looking at the numbers, 727 snaps out wide, only 72 in the slot. So he's the X. Yeah. All right, so let's roll it back. Let's take it from the top, guys. Let's cut out when I said they need an X. So I think the Eagles need to get a slot receiver, a dynamic slot receiver like Justin Jefferson. No, but honestly, just they need another receiver. And I think Smith can play anywhere, honestly. Like I know he clearly doesn't play in the slot a lot, but he seems like a body type that can
he's literally perfectly made for it.
Yeah. But that's what makes him so good is that he is an outside receiver with that type of body. and can win on all sorts of routes.
Right.
Yeah, I do think this is. Do you think receiver is where they should go? Like they. Do you think
I mean,
Jalen
I would
Reagor
have
is
to.
going to evolve next year to
No.
something?
Okay, if you're asking me that question, I guess I would have to approach that as two separate questions. Do I think that Jalen Rager has another step? My answer is no. And it's nothing against his skill set. It's more just like he's just never been that dude. He's been a straight line speed
Yeah.
guy, but has never really been a number one or threatened to be a number one guy at TCU, and certainly couldn't do it before they had Devontae Smith in last year's iteration of the Eagles. So no, I do think he's a piece you should have. He can be a nice take the top off guy, right? Like, but I don't think that there's much else that they can squeeze out of him. I will say that not having JJ Arcega-Whiteside turn into who I think they would have liked for him to be
This
really
is why I brought up
hurts.
the X thing, because I think about JJ and I'm like, that's who they need
You
that
would
player
like,
to pan
yes,
out.
exactly. You would like to have that enormous guy, a tight end size guy that has wide receiver skills, be that guy. But he's not that either. I will say having Dallas Goedert be who they hoped he would be after moving on from Zach Ertz, that's another big piece for them. So you have three of the five skill position guys that you really, really need, right? You got a good tight end. I really like Miles Sanders. And obviously you have a guy who looks like a number one wide receiver in Devontae Smith. So I don't know. With that in mind, I don't know how much draft capital you'd want to spend on the rest. Maybe you can find these veteran guys, unless there's some knockout, another knockout wide receiver that can win outside that allows you to say, hey, now we're going to use Devontae Smith as our high touches, high volume receiver and use everybody else as the vertical guys. I love that idea as well. I would have to look and see, how the wide receiver rankings in the draft kind of tie up with where they're going to be picking, because we still got to sort out who's going to be where after all these trades that they've made. But I do think that there is definitely some growth opportunity there. I would definitely say if you're going to draft on offense, I would draft at wide receiver right now, early, and probably not at offensive line, because I still think that they have another year or two they can get out of that group.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously if you can go get Drake London,
Yeah, dude, that's cash money.
yeah. Like you're good. Like there's no problem with that.
100%.
All right, let's move on to next topic. We want to talk about Justin Fields, who had a big game against the Vikings on Monday night. Big game. I thought he was really good. I mean, the scoreline didn't suggest that. I just thought he was really good. And he's coming around. I just looking at his PFF grade over the past, I think, 6 weeks, and he's like in the top 10 when you remove like RPOs and screens. So it's coming around. Are you still like, okay, yes, it's coming around, and they absolutely made the right decision. And honestly, this might be the best value pick in the draft when we look back.
That's that right there. That is the argument that I'm kind of hanging my hat on. Yes, it is true. He has made a lot of progression as a quarterback. I think that he is finding his rhythm and really understanding how to use his skill set to manipulate guys in the NFL. So that's been the most encouraging thing. I think we talked about this even when he was at Ohio State, right? It's like, for such a talented quarterback, it almost seemed like he still wasn't using all of his strengths to the maximum of their ability, and there's still some growth potential there. But you are seeing him get closer to it. The decision-making is getting better. I do think that he's starting to work a little bit quicker through some of his progressions, which is something that he needed to work on as well. And to your point, to be able to get a quarterback with this kind of upside where Chicago got them after the quarterbacks that were picked ahead of him, I think that you should be feeling really, really good about where he's at and where he tracks to be as they continue to build this roster out. They're almost in an inverted position of where Philadelphia is, right? Where Philly has a lot of pieces around Hurts, so now they know how to build the rest of it out. They're kind of in the opposite situation where I still think they got a lot of building around Fields to do, but you know that you got something in Fields. And I think that, as his accuracy has improved throughout the year, you're going to see more and more reason why they should be able to build the rest of this offense out around him. They just got to get Nagy out of the building, man. That's really my biggest takeaway. You got to get Nagy out of the building.
Yeah, I mean, I've said this the whole time, but Fields' accuracy will take him far. It's really, really good. It's really pinpoint. And to me, that's always just you can always hang your hat on that, and you can make bad decisions and get away with it with good accuracies, and he throws the ball really hard.
Especially with the arm talent that he has.
Like he can get away with a lot of stuff, and he's not really like, he's not really putting the ball in harm's way too much. I think there's some bad plays here and there, but it's been gotten so much better. And then the speed that which he can just accelerate from. You don't feel it, and we said this before. And one of the issues has always been when you compared him to a Zach Wilson or a Trevor Lawrence or even a Trey Lance, who anyone outside of San Francisco has completely forgotten about it exists.
I was about to say, dude, he's on a milk carton right now, man. I have no idea where that guy is.
Well, Jimmy G is one of the best quarterbacks in the league. You heard that, right? So basically, there's like I always say this, there's like a deliberateness to the way that Justin Fields plays. There's not that snappiness that you get from a Lawrence in his throwing mechanics or a Wilson in his throwing mechanics, and I think that skews your visual perception of the kid.
Yes, there is an aesthetic gap, I think, in how he plays quarterback versus how I think that we have now trained ourselves to contextualize quarterback.
It's not Aaron Rodgers.
Yes, it's not Aaron Rodgers. It's not Tom Brady. It's not Drew Brees. Sorry, and I don't know what else to say, guys. Like, there are more than one way to play quarterback,
and it's not even Lamar Jackson, right? In that quick twitchiness, I guess you would call it. Like I said, the snappiness. But then he'll roll out, and there was a play against the Vikings where I think they booted him, and then nothing was open down the field, and then he made one guy miss, and then he just took off, and it's like, oh yeah, he is really fast. That is
legit 4.4.
What literal deceptive speed is. Yes, is what he has.
It is very legit 4.4.
So I'm excited for him, and now we're just waiting for, if we take Trey Lance off the board, let's just talk about it quickly because we have some time here. Like, talk about Fields. We don't really talk about Mac Jones because he's done. This is probably too much talk about Mac Jones, but then with Lawrence and Wilson and Fields, they're in this group where it's like, hey, it hasn't looked great at times, but do you see more? Like, who do you see as like going forward? You've seen the most in terms of, hey, the way I think process should look like, it is there with this guy, even if the results aren't there.
Okay, so let me rank it in two different ways. I'll rank it in terms of performance this year, and then I'll rank them in terms of upside. And this is probably going to shock people, and I might be wrong. I'm open to hearing how you feel, but I think that if you rank them in terms of how they've performed over the course of the year, I will put Trevor first. I think, especially when you contextualize everything else that's happening there, I'll put Trevor first. I will put Fields second, and I will put Zach third. And then if you tell me in terms of upside, I might say Fields is first, Trevor is second, and then Wilson is third. And I'll maybe, and this might be biased by like some trajectory things or like the highest highs, because Fields, I think, has had some highs in terms of this season that have looked better than any of the other rookies so far this year. And maybe his middle, that kind of middle of the road performances has been lower than a Lawrence. But I do think when you look at like his best moments, you get a very clear visualization of what that might look like within the right framework. Same with Lawrence as well, right? Like, you're talking about two guys that are really good athletes that have great ball placement. I think that, if Fields had Lawrence's timing, and I think if Lawrence had, Fields' ability to work the ball down the field vertically, you would be talking about an ideal quarterback. So there are still some gaps in their games, but Fields is right there. And I would say that in both rankings, he is much closer to Lawrence than he is to Wilson. So they're still 1 and 1A to me. How do you have them kind of ranked, or how do you look at that trio of rookie quarterbacks?
I definitely think it's 1A, 1B with them. And like you, I would be tempted, very tempted, to put projecting Fields forward above Lawrence. And that's honestly for me, only because Lawrence continues to throw the ball to defenders.
Yes.
If the second he stops doing that, he's the best quarterback of all time. Because the traits are so unbelievable with Lawrence.
They're ridiculous. They're ridiculous.
But he's not, he's not a pinpoint accuracy guy. He's accurate, not a pinpoint accuracy guy. It means he can't keep throwing to linebackers and stuff like that. And you can explain away a whole bunch of interceptions and stuff like that and turnover really plays. Right. But I do think that is the main
it is what it is. On a certain level, there's kind of an it is what it is. And if we're going to be fair to him, he has way more dropbacks this year than the other two quarterbacks. Like they have relied on Lawrence in a way that's honestly ridiculous considering the fact that he's a rookie. So there is a bit of that in there as well. But yeah. I mean, even if you were to explain away the drops, the sacks, all the pressure, there are still just some horrible ball placement issues that he's had so far this year that I think if he cleans up, he's right. Like you said, he's right back to being, the perfect quarterback prospect. But that stuff does have to get cleaned up first.
And that's why I'm flirting with Fields, projecting Fields as the better quarterback going forward, just because he hasn't done that as much. Like these boneheaded type of decisions, you don't see it as much, and obviously the accuracy is really good, and everything else is really good.
Right.
And then Wilson, I mean, we don't have time. Like, I didn't see it with Wilson coming into this draft class, and I certainly don't see it with him.
Still don't see it now. Yeah,
it's not. This whole NFL thing is a lot for him right now. So you're hoping that in an ideal world, I think with all three of these guys, like we saw with Herbert, like we saw with Burrow, like we've seen with. Even Lamar Jackson a few years ago, you'd love for your rookie first round quarterback to come in and look like Herbert or Burrow or Lamar, right? And something like give me something. That hasn't. I don't know if that's happened for any one of them. So you're thinking, okay, it's fine because we have a whole offseason where they're going to be in the building. They have all these reps on tape. They can go look at their own play rather than just like imagining, when I'm in this, I'm going to go here to here to there. No, I saw what I did on tape and I can make corrections. But I think with with Wilson, that is super important. Like this offseason is super important because it's be like, okay, you get it. Okay, this was the bright lights. Okay, playing in the NFL field, all these defenses, it was too much for you. Let's get back into the lab in this offseason and figure it out. Because if not, it's not good. It's not going to be.
I mean, I'm willing. Yeah, right now, like that's kind of where I'm at with it. Is like, all right, you get the mulligan year. I will 100% just give you the mulligan rookie year. This is a lot. I mean, the system that he's in is quarterback friendly, but it does take a lot of time for it to become quarterback friendly. You got to really understand it in order to make it happen. But there is just something to be said when you're comparing like his struggles to a guy like Fields, and when you look at the data about like how much further down the field Fields is trying to throw the ball, and he's still been just as accurate, and he's not getting a lot of help in terms of yards after catch. He's always trying to push the ball past the sticks. Like there is something to be said for that in terms of performance with the context of degree of difficulty, and for that reason, that's probably why I'm saying, or I feel so comfortable saying, I think that he might be leading the pack in terms of upside going into year 2 and year 3 of his rookie deal.
Yeah, I think so too. And you're hoping, I think, with Fields that and maybe he's not even playing on the team next year, but you're hoping that they figure out a connection with Allen Robinson, something there, because you have this player who's obviously been a good receiver, and they can't figure it out. And if he's not going to be a number one receiver, they don't have anyone else, right? Like Mooney's whatever, and Cole Kmet's a rookie and he's been okay, but I don't know what else they have there. And obviously you're hoping that, they already took their offensive tackle. Tevin Jenkins looked whatever. I mean, he had some penalties, but he did a fine job, I thought, in his first start there on Monday night. So there's something to work with there. Obviously, Nagy being probably an issue. The rumors that Ryan Day, Ohio State's head coach, might end up as the Bears head coach. Your thoughts on that?
That would be interesting. I mean, right now, this year, right, at least at this point in the year, this is probably the wrong time to ask me how I feel about a college coach going to the NFL, given how the last college coach just did. Especially, considering the fact that they'd both be from the same place. But I do think an offense like that, it worked for him there. It worked for him when they were together at Ohio State. So I would be open to that I just think that it doesn't necessarily have to be a Ryan Day type. It's just got to be somebody who has an actual identity as an offensive coach. That's what I want to see Fields working in, because I still don't know what Matt Nagy is as a play caller, because it's always all over the place.
All right. The Too High podcast is presented by Western and Southern. Want the chance to win the ultimate game day feast, whether it's football success or financial savvy? Winning starts with asking us questions. Would you like to know what it's like behind the scenes with Al Michaels on Sunday Night Football? How about a need to know for your financial future? Western and Southern is teaming up with PFF's very own Chris Collinsworth to share insights that can help put you ahead on both your fantasy and financial scoreboards. Every submission earns you a chance to win the ultimate feast to celebrate football's favorite Sunday. We'll cover your catering up to $2,500, coordinate your order from a restaurant near you, and have it delivered on February 13th, 2022. And don't forget to check out the Chris Collinsworth podcast and Western and Southern's Instagram for answers to the best questions each week. Submit your questions at westernsouthern.com/askchris. One more time, that is westernsouthern.com/askchris. If you're watching on YouTube, check out the link in the description below. Remember, with Western and Southern, you can rest assured on game day. Ladies and gentlemen, that's enough of us. Have a Merry Christmas, Happy New Year from me and Diante, and we'll see you guys.
Yes.